if you can understand that God has layered his life and character and story into material existence, then you understand why Romans 1 says, actually everyone has a witness of God. Everyone has the potential to glimpse, however imperfectly, the truth of God. Might not be where they will be in 10 years, should they surrender their life to Christ and, follow the dictates of the Word and the instruction of the Holy Spirit. But we all have a witness in creation. And this idea of original holiness, have you ever thought, we talk about we want to be holy. We want to be holy unto the Lord. Holy disciples. You may have heard messages on holiness. What is holiness? What is it not? What does it look like? What does it not look like? In the Old Testament, we see so many stories that become theological frameworks grounded in history for things that become explained to us in the New Covenant, but they're revealed to us in the Old Covenant. So I have no desire to dismiss the Old Testament. I study the Old Testament. I take massive amounts of notes out of the Old Testament. The Old Testament is a historical record of the workings of God to prepare us with the full vocabulary necessary to comprehend who He is in the New Testament. And I don't move into the New Testament and celebrate it by turning my back on the Old. I look at the Old and see it for what it is, but I keep moving deeper into the New. The Old Covenant and the Old Testament is a massive repository of truth and revelation. It's history that is multi-layered with types and shadows. It's astonishing the way God tells His stories, fixed points in time that form intersections between eternity, cosmology, and theology. Romans 15 and 1 Corinthians 10 says He did all of that for our instruction. God told the story of Gideon for your instruction. Noah was a real man. Gideon was a real man. Moses was a real man. Deborah was a real woman. Adam and Eve were real people. Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Going to talk about that more tomorrow. The ark, the wandering in the wilderness, the water from the rock, the tablets of stone in the Holy of Holies, all of it. It was real. It's history. And yet, it did not just happen randomly or arbitrarily. It happened in such a way that God can scoop up those stories and say, I want to show you something beyond the history out of this. I want you to see and comprehend and understand divine mysteries that the story works on a different part of the brain. You know, we're the left brain, right brain thing, and I've been told that's kind of been debunked, but I still talk about it because I like it. It's useful. Left brain, right brain. You've got that creative, story-driven side and the logical CPA accountant side. And you actually receive truth and impact differently depending on which part you're processing out of. It's why the gospel is told theologically by Paul and narratively by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Because God is wanting the whole picture to be revealed, and He spent 4,000 years with history for you. That's a staggering thought. That could cause somebody to kind of feel a little proud, actually. It's like, He did all that for me. No, He really did. And it shouldn't actually produce pride. It should humble you. He told 4,000 years of history so that you could get a clue how good He is. The personality and values of the author of history naturally show up everywhere. However, this is also important to note. If there is a restoration of all things, which Acts 3 says there is, the restoration of all things is happening even now and has been happening since the days of the early church. The restoration of all things means that the things we're meant to understand, we haven't yet fully understood. And some truths have been lost that need to be restored. Some gifts have been forsaken that need to be reactivated. Some things have broken down that need to be built up. The restoration of all things means even the gospel itself needs some dusting off and some brushing up. Clearly, many things have been lost. But that's kind of the point, because the doctrine of total depravity tells us that everything was lost. See, it's not just that we fell into something, we fell from something. We didn't just fall into sin, we fell from glory. We didn't just fall into vice, we fell from fellowship and communion with the Creator of the universe. So true restoration means all of that will be regained. There's an illustration that I hope will be meaningful to you. I'm appealing to that story side of your brain. In 1903, the Russian Tsar was strolling through the grounds of the Kremlin, and he found a sentry posted in a random place in the plaza. The sentry was posted and standing at attention. The Russian Tsar walked by and said, "Why are you posted here?" The sentry had no idea. There had always been a sentry there. It was his rotation. He was doing his job. Come to find out, 127 years earlier, Catherine the Great had been strolling those same grounds, before it was the Kremlin grounds, strolling that same plaza, and Catherine the Great in 1776 came across the first flower of spring. And she grabbed a guard and said, "Stand right here. I don't want anyone to trample this flower." And for 127 years, the sentry remained. The flower was long gone. The flower had been forgotten for 126 years and 9 months. But the weight and protocol and burden of the stewardship, Catherine the Great had said, "Guard this." So the sentry took up their post, and they guarded something that no longer existed. Now, the flower wasn't wrong. The commission wasn't wrong. The heart wasn't wrong. The sentry wasn't wrong. None of it was wrong, but some vital connections had gotten lost. Some really important aspects of what this is about were now meaningless. And there was a ritual and a tradition that preserved what once had had life. We have the vocabulary of Christianity. We can talk about words that we all think we share. We can say grace. We can say righteousness. We can say covenant. We can say holiness. We can say justification. We can use all these great biblical words, meaningful words. They're beautiful flowers, but we don't know why we guard them. We don't know what they mean. We don't know their relationship to other ideas. We take our post around something because our parents told us about it, and their parents, going back and back and back 127 years, and we are guarding doctrines and words that once were beautiful and filled with life, and we just have a position on the concrete.